Hello everybody and welcome back to Bennett Does Games. Today I had the very distinct pleasure of playing the beta for Floppy Knights, which is an upcoming turn-based, card-based tactics game with an incredibly adorable aesthetic full of bouncy characters with big eyes, an incredibly likable duo of protagonists, very charming, albeit not outstandingly amazing writing, and a soundtrack that reminds me a lot of Rayman 1 for some reason. So all of that is already very promising. I love card-based video games, I love turn-based tactics games, and I like games that don't take themselves too seriously. And this is definitely one of those. That being said, it's not overly easy from what I've played so far. Basically, the way the game works is you pick a commander for your deck who will be your centerpiece of your strategy, most likely, and who will lose you the game should you get them killed. Then you'll also assemble a deck out of a bunch of other miscellaneous cards that either buff units, allow them to execute additional attacks, or allow them to move, which is incredibly important because your units cannot move without cards specifically designed for that purpose. Now, the fact that units cannot move at all unless you have a move card in your hand initially seemed a little frustrating to me. But then I realized that complaining about, oh, why can't I move if I don't have a move card, is like complaining, why can't I play any spells if I don't have any lands in my deck in Magic? So I moved away from that flawed line of thinking quite quickly. So you will effectively build a deck of up to 30 cards. There aren't, from what I can see, any specific energy colors. Currently in the beta version, there are plant cards and monster cards, which are green and red respectively, and you can play them from the same energy pool, so you don't have to worry about that. That being said, cards have better synergy with cards of their own type. It could be that in future updates there will be plant cards that are especially effective for monster cards, but right now the most notable example of synergy in the game is the growth card, which upgrades a plant card in your hand, which for units usually increases one of their stats, giving them more hit points, more attack power, more speed, or increases the effectiveness of a skill card, allowing a unit to move faster or heal more. All of that just from the card Grow. I'm just seeing right now the card is called Grow, not Growth. So all of that is fairly basic. Your deck should have a nice balance of move, attack, unit, and buff cards in it. Although the exact cards that you use should, later in the game when you have a larger selection to choose from, depend on the exact mission that you're facing. Something that I learned the hard way is that maybe you shouldn't employ a lot of small, fast-moving units with low hit points in an environment where lava kills them instantly and where losing a single unit means you don't complete the secondary objective. So there will be some level of strategy for those who want to complete every mission perfectly, which is always nice to see. Something that is a very interesting mechanic that I haven't seen anywhere else to my knowledge is the fact that every single unit card adds skill cards to your hand. So we'll have the little succulent kickers, I believe they're called, which will add a hop and kick to your hand, which you can then play on the same turn. but you can also save them for later. You'll discard your hand at the end of the turn, and then later they'll be shuffled back into the deck. What's interesting about that is that, for example, when you have a Spitoonia, which is a ranged artillery, quote unquote, to use Advanced Wars terms, unit that poisons enemies, that gives you the Poison Shot skill card, which you can then, however, use on any of your units to make them execute a poison attack. And that opens up a lot of different strategies, a lot of interesting synergies, where, yes, this tiny succulent kicker is weak, but if you play it, you get Hop, which is a 0-cost movement card, and Kick, which is a 1-cost attack with knockback, which can be nicely combined with a stronger unit that you can then move into place and use the Kick card that you gained from the Succulent Kicker. So that system, I absolutely love it. I think it's really clever. I've, like I said, never seen anything like it before. I like how it adds to the theme of your deck. So if you have multiple Spitoonias in your deck, that will also mean that when you play them, you'll add Poison Shot cards to that deck. So that way you'll be able to use even your non-poisonous units to execute poison attacks, to continue with the theme of poisoning enemies, if that's the strategy that you want to go with. So that's really clever. Absolutely love that. Now, the developers specifically asked for feedback on the beta. So now that I've talked about how I really appreciate the tactical gameplay, I love the deck building, I really enjoy the mechanic of units adding cards that you can then use on other units if you want. There are a couple of small things that I personally think would improve the game quite a bit if changed. So as you can see from the gameplay that I'm showing, there's a little number in the bottom right corner of every unit which shows their health, and that's obviously a really useful bit of information. You're going to want to know how much health a unit has. What the game does not show you, however, is how much damage a unit will deal when they attack. This has led to me losing units suddenly because an enemy was significantly stronger than I expected them to be just from looking at them, which I fully admit it is entirely my fault not to have hovered over the enemy to check. But considering that the damage that an enemy can deal is just as important to know as how much health they still have, I think you should probably add a little number indicating the damage that unit can deal in maybe the top right corner, the bottom left corner. I don't know for sure where you should put it, but I definitely recommend putting that information right there on the battlefield so players can just know at a glance what they're dealing with. Now, like I said earlier, your commander is incredibly important. They're always the first card you play. They will always add useful cards to your hand in the beginning of the game. The 3 commanders that I had a chance to try out in the beta, the starting one, Captain Thistle, I believe, is incredibly squishy and doesn't have any other abilities to make up for that fact. Like, she's a very damaging unit. However, putting her in the wrong place at the wrong time, which obviously, yes, I know, putting units in the wrong place at the wrong time is how you get them killed. But the fact that she could only survive 1 hit before the next one takes her down meant that I had no incentive to actually risk using her in battle. If she was tougher or gave some kind of passive bonus to units in her surroundings, then I would actually have a reason to move her closer to the battlefield. But as soon as I unlocked the Fat Cactus unit, I forget what it's called, I just used that unit for everything. Because it had a ton of health, it damaged multiple enemies around it, and if it dies I can just draw it back out of my deck later and play it again. So I never had an incentive to play risky and actually use the commander. So I immediately defaulted to the second commander you unlock, who has a passive ability that heals all of your units by 1 at the start of each one of your turns. And I just picked her and I just placed her on the far side of the battlefield and then just left her there because she was more useful just standing there than she was actually fighting. Again, while I do really like the ability of healing units passively, and I like that you gain a really powerful card when you play her, Mend, which heals all of your units by 2, which is crazy strong. If, again, she had an ability that made it so every time she defeats an enemy, all of your units are healed by 1. Or all units within a 4-tile radius are healed by 1. Then there would be much more of an incentive to actually play risky, which is the main appeal of a commander mechanic to me. If it's optimal to put the commander in the top left corner, then you're not going to have to worry about them. You're just going to put them in the top left corner and leave them there, because moving them closer to enemies is only a bad thing for you. So I definitely think that could be improved. There's another smaller issue that does add up over time. So every unit has a base attack. So long as they're within range of an enemy, they get 1 free attack per turn, which is great because it means that if you have multiple units and you use your move cards cleverly, you can move 3 of your guys into position and then use each one of them for a free attack to destroy the enemy, which you wouldn't be able to do with a single unit, because if you try to attack 3 times with a single unit, you'd have to move them into place, use their normal attack, and then still have 2 attack cards in your hand, which also cost energy, and you only have so much energy every turn. So that's great. That works wonderfully. Something that is weirdly counterintuitive, even though it makes perfect sense, is that if you play an attack card to, attack a specific enemy that's, say, standing next to your barrel cactus, then the way to do that is you drag the attack card onto your unit and then you select the target of the attack. And that makes perfect sense, and it's totally fine that that's how you do it. I just think that adding the option that if there is only 1 unit within range, if there's a blue blob in the forest and my barrel cactus is standing next to it, if I drag an attack card onto the blue blob, then I clearly want my barrel cactus to attack the blue blob, because that's the only option I have. So it would be really nice if the game recognized those kind of context-sensitive moments where, even though, yes, I admit I technically messed up and played the card on the wrong unit, which, if you play it on an enemy, it obviously doesn't do anything, it would speed up the game if I didn't then have to go back to the cards in my hand, click the attack card again, and then move it to my unit. It's a very small thing, but I think that change would make a huge difference, just in terms of fluidity in gameplay. And obviously, if there were 3 units in range of a single enemy and you play an attack card on that enemy, highlight the units that can attack and then allow the player to choose which one of the 3 units you want to execute that attack. I know it adds a little bit of extra work, but I think the way a lot of players are going to think is, okay, I want this enemy to be attacked, not I want this unit to attack this enemy. Maybe that's just me, maybe that's not a problem, but if other people mention that in their feedback, you might want to take it to heart. And similar to that, A lot of the time, since, I grew up playing Advance Wars and Fire Emblem, if I want one of my units to move, I'm going to click on that unit, and then I'm going to realize, oh wait, if I click on the unit that doesn't actually move them, I have to drag and drop a move card onto that unit. It'd be nice if clicking on a unit would then highlight the area in which they can move, and perhaps also highlight a move card in your hand, and then clicking over onto the tile that's 3 spaces to the right from the highlighted unit, the game would just either automatically select a move card if you have 3 of the same move card in your hand, or you move the unit, but the game asks you first which card you want to use for it. I think just adding these little options to reverse the order in which you do things, to reverse the order of engaging with the card game versus engaging with the tactics game, is going to make a huge difference to people who are more interested in the tactics aspect than the card game aspect. Those are really, so far, my only real points of criticism, the only real things that I think should even be changed about this game as it is. There are some aesthetic things that are entirely down to preference. I think that the map of just 4 little circles representing the 4 levels of each world is maybe not particularly engaging. Even something very old school, just having like a little sprite of Phoebe and Carlton walking around physically would be a little more charming, I think. Besides that, there is one big thing that I think the game currently lacks that I think needs to be addressed. I'm not saying that my solution is the correct one, I'm just bringing it up. So, since you work your way through your deck over and over again, there's no funds, there's no time limit on on any of the missions that I've played so far, besides an optional time limit on some of them. Since you never run out of cards and the enemies are not very aggressive on most maps, it's really hard to lose. There's really no incentive to play efficiently. There were, for example, the lava boss stage, which I absolutely love. I love the animation on the lava monster. I love the classic, oh, don't step on these tiles because burning rocks are gonna land there. Absolutely love that. That was a great mission. But the problem is that there is no urgency to any of it. I tried to beat it as quickly as I could just to challenge myself, but neither the main objective nor the side objective actually tasked me with doing things quickly, nor did it task me with doing things cleverly. It was defeat the lava monster and defeat 5 behemoths, which means that I can just stand there for 30 turns running my units through lava to kill them for fun and still beat the mission perfectly. And since the enemy is likely to just not reach my commander ever, there's no way to really lose unless I lose on purpose. And that's fine if you want the game to be more accessible. It's very clearly meant to be appealing to a younger audience as well, which is awesome. I think more kids need to need to play real video games. I'm definitely not going to complain about that. You being the developer, you're probably familiar with the way Advance Wars handles ratings at the end of missions. And I think that on perhaps New Game Plus, perhaps On hard mode, perhaps after completing a world, the game should track speed, power, and technique. You can call them whatever you want to call them. For those of you unfamiliar, Advanced Wars will measure how many enemy units you destroyed, how many units you lost, and how quickly you completed the mission, which basically tasks the player with finding the right balance of completing the mission efficiently and as quickly as possible, but also making sure not to lose too many units, and also making sure to destroy a decent number of enemies. And that system works amazingly well when trying to reward repeat playthroughs. I played more than most other games Advanced Wars Dual Strike for hundreds and hundreds, maybe 1,000 hours. I played that game to death. And the reason for that was because I kept trying to get better in every single mission. Because until you've reached 100% in all three of these aspects, you could always do a little bit better. And it had the nice effect that even though it didn't make the mission any harder to complete, it still added a level of, okay, how can I do this efficiently? How can I do this quickly? How can I do this without losing too many units? And finding not only the fastest way to do it, but then also finding the fastest way without losing too many units, and then combining those two strategies was endlessly satisfying. And I think since a lot of missions in Floppy Knights don't have a time limit, there really is no incentive to play risky or play well in a lot of them. I think add a system like that to the game. I know, again, it's extra work, but I think it's going to make the game more rewarding. And I think people are going to have tons of fun blasting through all the missions over and over again until they get them just right. And it has the added benefit of not just playing through the exact same mission over and over again, but finding the perfect deck to play through the mission again and do everything as efficiently as possible. I think if you're looking for people to write long FAQs about your game, that's how you do it. I'm overall really impressed with what I've seen from this game so far. I just randomly found it on Twitter and I thought, hey, it's a card game and a tactics game, and it looks kind of cute. I'm gonna see if I can get a beta key, and lucky for me, the developers were nice enough to send me one. And I'm really impressed with what I'm seeing so far. I love the level of polish. I love the humor. I love the art style. I love the music. I love the core concept of the gameplay. I absolutely adore that playing units adds new cards to your deck. That's brilliant. That has so much potential. And yeah, aside from the feedback that I mentioned, oh goodness, I just saw the clip of me running one of my units through lava by misclicking. Maybe add a little, "Are you sure?" prompt whenever a unit is about to walk through lava. That's my last thing. Maybe add a little prompt telling you, hey, we think you may have made a horrible mistake. But yeah, other than that, this game has tons of potential. I'll be keeping an eye on it, and hopefully I'll get a chance to review it when it releases. Make sure you subscribe for more, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye. Oh, my wife would say see you later, gamers, but they're asleep, so goodbye.